Well, good morning or afternoon or whenever it is that you're watching this. My name is Charlotte Stewart and I played Miss Beadle on Little House on the Prairie. You might recognize me there. That's Miss Beadle. And I was on the show for 4 years and I have remained really good friends with Allison Arngrim, who played Nellie, even though she was a brat when she was on the show. But she is one of the most fabulous people, as you already know because you're watching this show. So she has asked me to continue part of the reading of On the Banks of Plum Creek, which I have right here. And I'm going to start reading on chapter 20, School. This is the time when Mary and Laurie meet Miss Beadle. They start going to school in Walnut Grove. In fact, I've got this little artifact that somebody sent me of Miss Beadle and Laura, which is very sweet. A lot of people send me little tokens from Little House on the Prairie, and I so appreciate it. You know, it's nice to touch base. Nice to know that the show is still popular. Yeah, we made our mark, didn't we? Anyway, my job today is to read chapter 20, School, and I will start right now. Bear with me. Monday morning came. As soon as Laura and Mary had washed the breakfast dishes, they went up the ladder and put on their Sunday dresses. They could not wear their Sunday hair ribbons because they might lose them, so Ma wound their braids very tightly and bound them with thread. They put on their sunbonnets, freshly washed and ironed. Now, you've seen the sunbonnets because Allison has them all the time. She wears one every day when she reads. So you're very familiar with sunbonnets. And in those days, it was very important. Sun was very hot, and especially out in the Midwest. So they had to protect their faces. Then Ma took them into the bedroom. She knelt down by a box where she kept her best things, and she took out 3 books. They were books she studied when she was a little girl. One was a speller, one was a reader, and one was arithmetic. Reading, writing, and arithmetic. I am giving you these books for your very own, Mary and Laura, she said. I know you will take care of them and study them faithfully. Yes, Ma, they said. She gave Mary the books to carry. She gave Laura a little tin pail with their lunch in it under a clean cloth. Goodbye. Goodbye, girls. You be good. Ma and Carrie stood in the doorway, and Jack went with them down to the knoll. He was puzzled. Remember, Jack's the dog. Couldn't figure out where were they going with all that stuff. They went across the grass where the tracks of Pa's wagon went, and Jack stayed close beside Laura. What was going on here? When they came to the ford at the creek, he sat down and whined anxiously. Where are you going? Where are you going? Laura had to explain to him that he must not come any further. She stroked his big head and tried to smooth out the worried wrinkles. But he sat and watched and frowned while they waded across the shallow, wide ford. They waded very carefully. They did not want to splash their clean dresses. A blue heron rose from the water, flapping away with its long legs dangling. Oh, I bet that was so pretty. Laura and Mary stepped carefully onto the grass. They would not walk in the dusty wheel tracks until their feet were dry, because their feet must be very clean when they came to town. Now, Allison has probably read the part where Mary and Laura do not have shoes. So, and Pa has some very old shoes that he's had for a long time. So, they wanted to be clean when they came to town. The new house looked so small on its knoll, with the great green prairie spreading far around it. Ma and Carrie had gone inside. Only Jack started watching from the ford. Oh, you're so worried. Where are they? I have the hiccups in case you can't tell. Do you ever get the hiccups? Yeah, sometimes when you're a little nervous, you get hiccups. And, you know, a little nervous reading this. I want to make it right. Okay. Mary and Laura walked on quietly. Dew was sparkling in the grass. Meadowlarks were singing. Snipes were walking on their long, thin legs. Prairie hens were clucking and tiny prairie chicks were beeping. Rabbits stood up with their tiny paws and long ears twitching and their round eyes staring at Laura and Mary. Who are they? Where are they going? Pa that said that town was only 2.5 miles away and the road would take them to it. They would know when they were in town when they came to a house. Large white clouds sailed over the enormous sky, and their gray shadows trailed along the waving prairie grasses. The road always ended a little way ahead, and when they came to the ending, the road was going on. It was only the tracks of Pa's wagon through the grass. For pity's sake, Laura, keep your bonnet on. You'll be brown as an Indian, and what will the town girls think of us? I don't care, Laura said bravely. You do too. I don't either. You do. I don't. You're just as scared as I am, said Mary. Laura did not answer. After a while, she took hold of her bonnet strings and pulled the bonnet over her head. Anyway, there's 2 of us, Mary said. They went on and on. After a long time, they saw town. It looked like small blocks of wood on the prairie. When the road dipped down, they saw only grasses again and then sky. Then they saw the town again, only larger. The smoke went up from the stovepipes. The clean, glassy road ended in dust. This dusty road went by a small house and then past a store. The store had a porch with steps going up to it. Beyond the store, there was a blacksmith shop. It stood back from the road at the bare place in front of it. Inside was a big man in a leather apron making bellows. At red coals. He took a backstrap. He took a white, hot iron out of the coal with tongs and swung a big hammer down on it. Whang! Bang! Dozens of sparks flew out into the daylight. He was a blacksmith. Now, blacksmith was the fellow that made all the shoe horns for the horses' hoofs, and he made chains, and he probably made part of the fence gate, and all things iron. And he had a very special job to keep things together and keep people safe. So that was Mr. Blacksmith. Maybe we'll find out his name later. Beyond the bare place was a back of a building. Mary and Laura walked close to the side of this building. The ground was hard here. There was no more grass to walk on. In front of the building, another wide, dusty road crossed their road. Mary and Laura stopped. They looked across the dust at the fronts of 2 more stores. They heard a confused noise of children's voices. Pa's road did not go any further. "Come on," said Mary low, but she stood still. It's a school where we hear the hollering. Pa said we would hear it. Laura wanted to turn around and run all the way home. She was scared. But she was brave also. She and Mary walked slowly out into the dust and turned toward the noise of the voices. They went padding between the two stores. They passed a pile of boards and shingles. That must be the lumber yard where Pa got the boards for the new house. The lumber yards. Then they saw the schoolhouse. It was out on the prairie beyond the end of the dusty road. The long path went through to it and through the grass. Boys and girls were in front of it. Laura went along the path toward Mary, and Mary came behind her. No, that didn't make any sense at all. I get a little ahead of myself. Laura went along the path toward them, and Mary came behind us. All those girls and boys stopped their noise and looked. Laura kept going nearer and nearer all those hours, and suddenly, without meaning to, she swung the dinner pail and called out, "You all sound like just a lot of prairie chickens." They were surprised, but they were not as surprised as Laura. She was ashamed, too. Mary gasped, "Laura!" Then a freckled boy with fire-colored hair yelled, "Snipes yourself! Snipes! Snipes! Long-legged Snipes!" Laura wanted to sink down and hide her legs. Her dress was too short, and it was much shorter than the town girls' dresses. So it was Mary's. Before they came to Plum Creek, Mary had said they were outgrowing their dresses. Their bare legs looked long and spindly like Snipes' legs. Oh my goodness. All the boys were pointing, yelling, "Snipes, Snipes." Well, that was rude. Then a red-headed girl began pushing those boys, saying, "Shut up. You're making too much noise. Shut up, Sandy." Then she said to the red-headed boy, and he shut up. She came close to Laura and Mary and said, "My name is Christy Brinkley." No, it's not Christy Brinkley. I watch too much television. Her name was Christy Kennedy. And that horrid brother is my brother Sandy, and he doesn't mean harm. What's your name? Her red hair was braided so tightly that the braids were stiff. Her eyes were dark blue, almost black, and her round cheeks were freckled. Her sunbonnet hung down her back. "Is that your sister?" she said. "Those are my sisters." Some big girls were talking to Mary. "The big one's Nettie, and the black-haired one's Cassie. And then there's Donald and me and Sandy. How many brothers and sisters have you?" "Two," Laura said. "There's Mary, and Carrie's the baby. She has golden hair, too. We have a bulldog named Jack. We live on Plum Creek. Where do you live?" "Does your pa drive two bay horses with black manes and tails?" Christy asked. "Yes," Laura said. "They are Sam and David, our Christmas horses." She was very proud. "Here comes our house, so you come by it too," said Christy. "It's the house before you come to Beadle's store and post office, before you get to the blacksmith shop. Miss Eva Beadle's our teacher." Here I go. Miss Eva Beadle. "And that is Nellie Olson." Nellie Olson was very pretty. Her yellow hair hung in long curls, with two big blue ribbon bows at the top. Her dress was thin white lawn with little blue flowers scattered all over it, and she wore shoes. She looked at Laura and she looked at Mary and she wrinkled up her nose. Country girls! Before anyone could say anything, a bell rang. A lady stood in the schoolhouse doorway swinging the bell in her hand. All the boys and girls hurled by her into the schoolhouse. She was a beautiful lady. Isn't that nice? Her brown hair was frizzled in bags over her brown eyes and done in thick braids behind. Buttons sparkled all down the front of her bodice, and her skirts were drawn up tightly in back and fell down behind in big puffs and loops. Her face was sweet, and her smile was lovely. Isn't that nice? And I got to play Miss Beadle. Mm-hmm. You're the new girl, aren't you? She said to Laura. Yes, ma'am, said Laura. And is this your sister? Teacher asked, smiling at Mary. Yes, ma'am, said Mary. Then come with me. I'll write your names in the book. Oh, my goodness. They went with her the whole length of the schoolhouse, stepping up on the flat platform. The schoolhouse was a room made of new boards. Its ceiling was underneath of the shingles like an attic ceiling. Long benches stood one behind the other down the middle of the room. They were made of planked boards. Each bench had a back with two shelves stuck out from the back over the bench behind. Only the front bench did not have any shelves in front of it, and the last bench did not have any on back. There were two glass windows in each side of the schoolhouse. They were open, and so was the door. The wind came in, and the sound of waving grasses, and the smell and the sight of the endless prairie and the great light of the sky. It's like I'm looking out my window right here, and I see lots of light out in my yard, and it's very pretty. Laura saw all of this while she stood with Mary by the teacher's desk, and they told her their names and how old they were. She did not move her head, but her eyes looked all around. A water pail stood on a bench by the door. A Broughton broom stood in the corner. On the wall behind teacher's desk was there a big, smooth space of boards painted black. Underneath was a little trough, and some kind of short white sticks lay in the trough, and a block of wood with woolly bits of sheepskin pulled tightly around it and nailed down. Laura wondered, what were these things? Well, we know now it's chalk and eraser boards. Oh, am I getting ahead of myself? Well, we'll see. Mary showed teacher how much she could read and spell, but Laura looked at Ma's book and shook her head. She could not read. She was not even sure of all the letters. Well, you can begin at the beginning, Laura, said teacher, and Mary can study further on. Do you have a slate? They did not have a slate. I will lend you mine, said teacher. You can not learn to write without a slate. She lifted up the top of her desk and took out a slate. The desk was made of a tall box with one side cut out for her knees. The top rose up on bottom hinges, and under it was a place where she kept things. Books were there, and a ruler. Laura did not know until later that the ruler was to punish anyone who fidgeted or whispered in school. Yeah, but I think Miss Beadle was really kind and she didn't really hit anybody. But, you know, you be quiet. Go stand in the corner, Willie. Oh, that'll come later. Okay, anyone who was naughty and had to walk up to the teacher's desk and hold out their hand while teacher slapped it many times hard with the ruler. Oh, gosh, I didn't know that. But Laura and Mary never whispered in school, and they always tried not to fidget. They sat side by side on a bench and studied. Mary's feet rested on the floor, but Laura's dangled. They held their book open on the bookshelf before them. Laura studying at the front of the book and Mary studying further on, and the pages between standing straight up. Laura was in a whole class by herself because she was the only pupil who could not read. Whenever teacher had time, she called Laura to her desk and helped her read letters. Just before dinner time the first day, Laura was able to read C-A-T, cat. Suddenly she remembered and said, P-A-T, pat. Teacher was surprised. Rat, R-A-T, said teacher, M-A-T, mat. And Laura was reading. She could read the whole first row in the speller. At noon, all the other children and teacher went home to dinner. Well, it wasn't really home to dinner, it was lunchtime. But everybody lived close, so they probably did go home, and their mother fixed them a little lunch. Laura and Mary took their dinner pail and sat in the grass beside a shady side of an empty schoolhouse. They ate their bread and butter and talked. I liked school, said Mary. So do I, said Laura, only it makes my legs tired. And I don't like that Nellie Olson that called us country girls. We are country girls, said Mary. Yes, but she didn't need to wrinkle her nose, Laura said. That is the end of chapter 20, and I was so pleased to read it. Thank you, Allison, for letting me read it. Let me show you a couple of things. I think I showed you this that was sent to me by a fan. It's Miss Beadle and Laura learning to read. And I showed you Miss Beadle. And I wanted to show you the latest Beadle bag that I have made. I have to put my chair back a little bit so you can see it. This was ordered by a fan. It's called the Ingalls Christmas. You see it? The Ingalls Christmas. I just made that today, and I'm going to ship it out on Monday. And here's one that Nellie might like that I'm working on right now. It's Nellie and her mom, Mrs. Olson. So that's going to be made into what I call a Beadle bag. It's a tote bag. And then I have something else to show you, which is, this is a lunch pail. Now, Laura and Mary didn't have this because this wasn't made, but it's very simple, and it's a lot like the lunch pails that children used in the times when Laura and Mary were growing up. This is a reproduction with pictures from the show, and I love it. It's great. Well, and I have one more thing to show you. This was made by a fan. It's a picture of Laura reading from the Dicky Bird book. Laura reading Dicky Bird. So I can make a bag out of almost anything you send me or that I have here. You'll see them on behind me. I'm ready to mail them out. So thank you very, very much. And if you wish to order something from me, a Beadle bag or a pillow, you may write to me on my email. I'm going to say it and then I'm going to spell it. It's lottiebanks@yahoo.com, and that is spelled all lowercase, LOTTEBANKS at yahoo.com. So write to me, send me a picture, let me know how you like this, okay? God bless. Wear your mask, wash your hands, and I'll see you next time. Bye.